Good morning, everyone. I'm AJ Rathmanunan, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Consortium, I want to thank you for joining us today and to welcome you to the Consortium Annual Conference. Today, we come together to celebrate the creativity of teachers. Whether you teach young people in the classroom or in another role within your school, I hope that what you hear from today's amazing keynote speakers reflects the reasons why you do your work, how you do your work, and the importance of the work that you do. Today is an opportunity for us to celebrate and reflect, but also to reinforce the urgency of our shared mission to create classrooms and schools where young people have the freedom to learn the power of their own ideas. As we all know, the professionalism of teachers is under attack in many ways. Book banning and reactionary school boards, scripted curriculum, and the increasing number of hours lost to standardized testing are just a few. And yet, in September, when New York State published a report about performance assessment to inform the revision of graduation requirements, the report stated clearly what we have always known, that providing teachers with resources, support, and time to create high-quality assessments and rubrics leads to more valid and reliable measures of student mastery. We in the consortium know that assessment that works cannot be mandated or rolled out from the top. It and the curriculum from which it arises must be built by the people who know students best. By choosing to teach in a consortium school, you have decided to not just take on this work, but to share what you have developed with others in the hopes that more young people will have the opportunities that you have offered your students. We thank you for taking on this work and for fighting when necessary to protect it. And now to the main event. I am honored to introduce Anson Dean, who is a social studies teacher at Urban Academy, a consortium alum, and our MC for this morning. Anson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, AJ. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Phyllis. I'm really honored to be here as a graduate of Urban Academy, class of 2005. When I first graduated, you could not have told me in 20 years that I would be sitting here in this seat. But what I will say is that Urban Academy did plant the seeds in me at a very young age to let me know that I would be an educator. As some people might know, our students are required to participate in mandatory community service every Wednesday. And it just so happened that my interest in working with young people started during community service. I was able to work with every age range up until the point that I graduated, but I didn't still quite think that I would be an educator. Upon my graduation from undergrad, I started working in non-for-profit in various capacities, whether it be summer camp, after school programming, providing supplementary programming to junior high school and high school students. But there was something, there was a hunger, there was an itch that hadn't yet been scratched. And through working with administrative individuals within the realm of not-for-profit, I soon learned that a lot of the ideas that I was forming, a lot of the ideas that I developed from being an undergrad, being in my first master's program, I wouldn't really be able to implement them in the way that I thought was necessary. And at the end of the day, I think an educator, what truly makes an educator special is when they are able to extract from their personal experiences, extract from their personal beliefs, and combine those two things to create, really beneficial and special programming for our young people. So it just so happened that in 2019, I had a few ideas, just ideas, of new courses that I wanted to kind of bring to high schoolers, and it just so happened that I was still connected with Urban Academy. So I was able to bring my ideas to Urban Academy, and luckily, thankfully, the folks that were there at the time, the staff, they were able to help me take my very small ideas and transform them into big opportunities for our students, and I'm still here. So one of the things I do want to say is that creativity is at the heart of any special educator. It is really what brings to light what we need to do for our young people. But I don't want to ramble on because we have some folks that are probably way better at explaining that than I can. So what I do want to do is I want to take the time to introduce a fellow consortium alum by the name of Martine Adames, who teaches special education at International Community High School in the Bronx. Martine, if you're there, I'm going to send it over to you, and I'm going to be quiet now, and I'll see you all shortly.
Good morning, everyone. I am Martin Adames, a special education teacher at International Community High School in the Bronx. Talking about the consortium speaks volumes about my life. I've been part of the consortium since the 9th grade. So let me tell you my story. Coming to the United States from Colombia at 11 years old was not my choice. Growing up in the US was difficult, and like any kid, I wanted to have fun, play outside, and not worry about food or housing. It was hard to be a kid, go to school, and come home to finish my homework, watch TV, and play video games. At 13, I had my first job, help pay rent, and try to learn to care about myself. All of this while I struggled to find a place in life, while I was still growing up and changing from being a boy to a young adult. I felt trapped in a long corridor of locked doors. The language was a barrier, my family was a barrier, my legal status was a barrier, my roots were a barrier, money was a barrier. While I often felt hopeless, I had dreams. I always hoped for a better tomorrow. This is the story of many immigrants, including that of my students. I went to middle school for 2 years, but still felt lost. But with great luck, I found my way to international high school at LaGuardia. I started meeting wonderful people. Little did I know, high school would start changing my life and shaping my future. I was lucky to have teachers that care about me, teachers that had a philosophy of giving and encouraging me to explore beyond. That is my view of the consortium, a place where I was able to have a choice and a voice, a place to discover possibilities and become a critical thinker. As a student, I learned to have empathy for those around me. I was fortunate to have people like Miss Dina, who was like an angel, a mother, and someone who cared about me for many years. Mr. Travka, who inspired me to learn to play guitar while teaching me about American civics. Mr. Elliott, who taught me about art. Diego Rivera and how to create murals. Dr. Katz, my mentor, an inspiration, a friend, a teacher, and the most critical thinker I've met, who surprisingly became a colleague while working together at International Community High School. My teachers were able to teach me foundational knowledge and skills to be able to analyze, problem solve, and think critically. So what an incredible journey. What a fantastic place to be. How was this unique institution and organization able to change my life? International and the consortium gave me the power to speak, to reflect, to write, to think independently, to care about others, a chance to thrive, to grow, to learn so much while creating bridges in math class, exploring the Newtown Creek, and testing water levels, to sing and perform at different art and music performances, to read books I never would have read and come to love history. The first book I read was Catcher in the Rye because Miss Dina was interested in what I thought and expected so much out of me. The consortium, along with the international community, gave me a chance to fulfill my dreams, to not give up. School gave me a chance to grow. It opened up a world and gave me a glimpse of other cultures. Today, over 20 years after graduating from high school, I am a special education teacher at International Community High School. I bring all my life experiences into the classroom. As a teacher, I have come to understand the role of a teacher based on what I observed from teachers at International at LaGuardia. My teachers and the school were always there for me, and I try to always be there for my students. As an educator, coach, motivator, disciplinarian, counselor, and all the other hats that we teachers wear. I want my students to have hope and believe in themselves. I want them to know there are adults here for them as there were for me. I want them to understand and make sense of the world through the different disciplines they study. I want them to value their minds and see that they are capable of learning and thinking deeply and critically. I want them to love learning. I want them to see how one person can be a force for change. I tell them, You always have the choice to start, to change, to better yourselves. So don't wait and make the choice now, today. And I'll be here with you whenever you're ready. I teach them about advocacy and how to fight for their rights and that of others. I want them to have good and meaningful lives. We are changing lives and we are changing the world. I want my students to feel that they can become and do what they really want to do. I want them to believe that they can be a force for justice within their communities. I love being a teacher, and I am grateful that I can do this work in a consortium school. Thank you.
Martine, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your experience and definitely that testimonial. We're not in person, so we can't clap it up. But what I will ask is for those of you that are streaming and watching the YouTube, please, if you have access to the comment stream, just add a comment. You can clap. If there's somebody, a speaker or somebody that actually adds a comment that you agree with, or you just want to give it a shout out, please make sure that you do so, because we can't be in person. We still have to try to find our way to build community virtually, even though that sounds kind of weird, but it is a thing. Martine really spoke about this idea, the way I interpreted it, of family. What makes consortium schools really special, in my personal opinion, I'm pretty sure you all would agree, is that we get a unique opportunity to engage with our young people through inquiry, right? Through this idea of getting to know them in all aspects of their lives, and to really see them for the multifaceted young people that they are. So we also wear many hats that I will gladly wear at any given time, whether it be a fedora, a beanie, or whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to someone that actually teaches a subject that I'm not too confident in. So Semia Schneider teaches math at Middle College High School at LaGuardia Community College. Semia, hopefully you're ready. I'm gonna throw it over to you, and I'm going to be quiet now. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity today. My name is Semia Schneider. I am a math teacher at Middle College High School. I came to love mathematics because it is thought-provoking, intriguing, creative, beautiful, and elegant like poetry. It does bring me joy. I wanted to pass on this passion, so I became a math teacher. When I started to teach in 2004, I knew that my school was part of the consortium and that I had the flexibility to use any resources to teach. But I was never satisfied with my lessons. I always felt that there was something missing. A few years into teaching, I was introduced by Jonathan Katz to non-routine problem solving and teaching through inquiry, and my teaching career changed. Students became the center of the class. They would work on a non-routine problem by journaling the ideas, strategies, and challenges. By being challenged this way on a regular basis, students learned how to make sense of the contextual situation and used what they knew to think about it. They learned to reason about the problem, discuss it in mathematical terms, and justify their thinking. They began to notice patterns and increase their fluency with numbers. I also have my students investigate, discover mathematical concepts through inquiry so that they come to make sense of mathematical ideas and procedures. Often, I combine the two approaches by using non-routine problems to help develop conceptual understanding. I was excited to teach every day, and I felt joy and satisfaction from teaching. Now, many years later, I am even more convinced that this is the way of teaching. In retrospect, I think I would have changed my career if I hadn't had the opportunity to explore this way of teaching. I also would like to share with you the story of two of my students. Allison, who liked learning through this approach to teaching and learning, came to believe in herself and her own capabilities. She loved to work on her PBET problem called the PEG game. She came to own her problem in such a deep way that the thinking even went into her unconscious mind. So while sitting in a social study class, suddenly one of the solutions to her math problem just popped in her brain. And then there is Sharar, a young man from Bangladesh who came to this country having started to study calculus. When I gave him a non-routine problem to work on, All he could think of were all the formulae he learned. He was frustrated because he learned all the content, but didn't know how to think mathematically. Over time, he became more humble and saw that there was much more to learn about mathematics. Teaching through inquiry and through non-routine problems is fun. When students enjoy playing with problems, they came to see that math is more interesting than they thought it was. They also come to believe that they are more capable of thinking mathematically. This change in student perceptions helps them to enter college and the real world with more confidence because they learn to become problem solvers and independent thinkers. They learn to persevere and be comfortable making mistakes. And I have learned through these years how to listen to their ideas and have a genuine interest in how they are thinking, because only then can I help them become better thinkers and problem solvers. Teaching in a consortium school give us this freedom, give us the freedom to teach for deeper understanding, and I am grateful for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Samia. I introduced Samia by saying that math is a subject that I wasn't confident in as a young person. And I do want to say that that lack of confidence started in a traditional school. I was a student in the 9th grade and I was talking to my peers trying to understand. And as a result of me talking, I was ridiculed for doing so. Fast forward to me actually transferring to a consortium school, and I was able to take classes that actually relied on me talking and actually exchanging my ideas with my peers. So perspective and setting is everything. Although I never fully felt like a mathematical genius, I did graduate from high school and made it into my adulthood feeling as if I was a logical, critical thinker, which I think is just as important as feeling as if you can solve algebraic equations at the age of 15. So without further ado, we're going to transition to our next speaker, who is Jeremy Copeland, who teaches social studies at School of the Future. So take it away, Jeremy.
Good morning, everybody. And again, thank you for this opportunity to speak at this event on behalf of School of the Future. So how did femininity and assumptions about gender impact the rhetoric, tactics, and philosophy of the women's suffrage movement? How can the US Constitution be made more democratic? Why should the voting age be lowered to 16? Why don't Dominicans want to be Black? How and why does race play a role in how people view the Israel-Palestine conflict and the behavior that the Israeli government exhibits? Why is the abortion debate so basic? Now, it's been decades since I graded a social studies regents, but I don't expect any of the aforementioned questions to appear as essay prompts on one anytime soon. Yet, they might if students were allowed to craft their own Regents exam questions. See, these questions were all raised and explored by my students as part of their history exhibition work, and the answers they came up with were profound. These types of questions, provocative, insightful, relevant, personal, controversial, these questions and the research projects that ensue are a critical part of the work we do in the history department and in all classrooms at School of the Future. And since I taught in Regent schools for 7 years before finding my home at SOF in the fall of 2003, I have a deep appreciation for the questions my students and I get to raise and explore throughout a school year. I have a deep appreciation for the opportunity to develop rigorous, meaningful curricula. Basically, I have a deep appreciation for what we're all entitled to as professionals, learners, and citizens. Allow me to explain. When I arrived at SOF in the fall of '03, I had already taught several years at a vocational high school downtown Brooklyn. So I wasn't exactly green, but I wasn't a seasoned veteran either. I suppose I saw myself as someone who could manage to get kids to pass a history regents while still teaching them real history. If I had to sneak a period to talk about Amadou Diallo and the 41 shots fired at him as he reached for his wallet, I would make the necessary adjustments to my plans and pray I wasn't observed that day. Once an AP referred to me as the one with the Montessori methods after he saw the desks arranged in a circle in my room. I don't think that was a compliment. So I assumed that's what teaching history entailed, and I made the most of it. When I found out about a humanities position, position at School of the Future, I didn't know anything about the consortium, and I had no idea they were alternatives to the Regents exam. It was as if I stepped into another dimension. The conversations I once held covertly were encouraged. I was introduced to the habits of mind and rubrics. Students were running their own clubs and extracurricular activities. They were advocating for same-sex marriage and organizing against Islamophobia. I knew it's where I needed to be. I used the phrase real history earlier. Whenever I tell people I'm a history teacher, there are several typical reactions. Some shrug and say they hated history because of all the dates you have to remember. Others will tell you they always loved history and might even mention a history teacher who inspired them. Some will ask, well, do you teach real history? Sometimes that question is obnoxious because I know it was provoked by some nonsense the person watched on YouTube, but I actually get it because it's a term I use myself at times. And while I will continue to hone and strengthen my curriculum and assessments until the day I retire, I can say with some certainty that 20 years at a consortium school has enabled me to teach real history. The civil rights movement and the legislation of the 1960s happened when it did, and the legislation was passed when it was, not because Black folks suddenly realized we were oppressed and white folks suddenly saw the light. It was largely because this new thing called television pulled the curtain back and exposed the hypocrisy of US democracy amid its rivalry with the Soviet Union. I don't think the Regents exam is asking about that. So yeah, I get a little real history in there when I can. I should also note the research I've done to create curriculum has led to my own growth and deeper understanding of US history in ways that were stifled by a Regents curriculum. My women's suffrage movement includes essays by Emma Goldman and Ida Tarbell, both critics of women voting. They're not asking about Emma Goldman on the Regents, and maybe they'll tell you Ida Tarbell was a muckraker. And I know the thrill that genuine research gives me is passed on to my students. Sometimes I'm in disbelief at how much I still enjoy coming to work after all these years. I can't watch a movie or a documentary that is remotely historical or political and not think about how I'm going to use it in my class. I constantly look for new ways to upgrade my curriculum and challenge myself and my students. I'm certain it's because I'm at a consortium school, and to be frank, with all due respect, this particular consortium school, SOF, the educators, the pedagogy is first rate, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for each and every colleague and friend in the building. Everyone deserves to work at a consortium school. Everyone deserves to be educated at a consortium school. I grew up in Queens, and my parents sent me to a small Lutheran high school instead of my zone school because they wanted to make sure I was educated and safe. I think they were actually looking for something like a consortium school, but we ain't even had the internet yet, so we had to go another route. Chapel it was. Now, I say all of this while acknowledging no system is perfect. I don't work in a utopia, and some students struggle with timed multiple choice exams in college after they graduate. And there are some benefits to the skills strengthened by standardized tests. But in a democracy, assessment is challenging. It has to be tailored to all types of learners with different backgrounds. And I'm certain the benefits of authentic assessment outweigh the obstacles created by Regents exemptions. The creativity, research, writing, collaboration, content, and everything that flourishes in the consortium has sustained and inspired me for over 2 decades, and I can't imagine teaching anyplace else. Again, everyone, I thank you for the opportunity, Adam, AJ, Anson, Phyllis, for this, and everyone enjoy your second semester.
Jeremy, thank you for that. That was a very solid breakdown of really your perspective of like why history is important and really why inquiry is important. I mean, history is not names and dates, right? It's the ability to interpret, analyze, and critically think about things that have happened, things that are currently happening, and things that might actually happen in the future. One of the things I like to think about as I come into work every day is, can we predict the future? The answer is yes, we can, but not in this mythical sense, right? It's the idea that if we take the time to pour into our young people, get to know them, understand what they're thinking, take the time to apply what they're thinking and what they need into actual activities and experiences that they can have on a day-to-day basis, and really listen to them, read their work, hear what they have to say during discussions, we can really get a sense of what the future will look like if we take the time to really listen to and really apply new situations and new opportunities to our young people. So I'm gonna leave you with that as we transition to Danielle Dubno-Hammer, who teaches green science research at the Institute for Health Professions at Cambria Heights. Danielle, you are up next. I'm going to mute myself now. Bye.
Thank you, Anson. Good morning, everyone. My career in the consortium started almost 2 decades ago, and most of that time has been spent working on PBAT courses. Today, I'm going to say a few words about why I came here, why I stayed, and why I believe so strongly in what we do as consortium teachers. In 2002, I was looking for my first job in the science field after graduating from college with a bachelor's degree in biology. And after getting a few rejections, I responded to a newspaper ad for research coordinator in a lab doing stem cell research at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. I was offered the job, and although the salary barely covered the cost of transportation, this would be the first experience in my life that would show me what science looks like and what scientists actually do. My first task was to learn the concepts underlying the type of research the scientists were doing and to prep all the solutions they needed to do their experiments. This part of the job I was prepared for because I had spent the previous 16 years reading and memorizing facts, following the steps of lab procedures with predetermined outcomes, and most of my assessments had come in the form of exams. But then one day I was asked to design and carry out a simple experiment to test the effect of a growth factor on the way in which stem cells differentiate or develop into different types of cells. And for the first time in that role, I was lost. I didn't know where to start. I had never been asked to design an experiment in my life. And so I couldn't execute the task. And when I decided I wanted to work with kids in schools instead of with scientists in a lab, I went back to school for teaching. I learned that there had been many great thinkers and so much evidence throughout history of powerful learning coming from the having of experiences, from working on problems that have personal significance and meaning. But when I went out to do observations and student teaching in schools all around New York City, I wasn't seeing this anywhere. I was seeing more of what I had done in school. Until by chance, with a little luck, after another placement fell through, I got an opportunity to student teach at a consortium school, ICE. And for the first time, I saw kids deeply engage in the type of work that Dewey and Piaget had written about. Later, as a teacher there, I found the freedom to design curriculum that mattered to me, to experiment with ideas, to reflect on outcomes, and to pose new questions, to do the very thing that I wanted to make possible for my students. And I was encouraged to make choices that would align my work with my own passions and interests. I turned a half-year course on perception into a full year of neuroscience, and later at the Institute for Health Professions at Cambria Heights into what I called behavioral science research. A few years later at IHPCH, I went to my school leaders and asked if I could scrap all of this for a new course called Green Science Research, and they said yes. And they found ways to get the equipment that my kids needed to investigate ways to grow food, reduce carbon output, improve their environment, and to restore a connection to nature at school. I saw that really no matter the topic, kids had important experiences and knowledge to share, problems that they cared about, and under the right conditions and just enough guidance could make choices that would lead them to what they consider to be their very best work. And I think about how my own life might have looked different had I been given the same opportunities to work on problems that matter to me and to look at my work from different perspectives. Not because it might have allowed me to take on that task I was asked to do in the lab years ago, and not because it might have made me a scientist, but because I might have had better tools to tackle the challenges that I would confront in all different areas of my life. And that's something I think every child deserves, not just those whose families can afford to send them to progressive private schools. I encourage all teachers to continually check that the essential questions guiding their teaching truly speaks to their own heart. Do they excite you? And if not, what would reignite your passion? And I encourage school leaders to provide teachers with the freedom to make choices whenever possible. Furthermore, create opportunities for students to make choices about the problems they will work on and how they will arrive at solutions. Encourage diversity in their thinking and in the work they produce. And lastly, support students in establishing norms that foster trust, respect, and openness so that they can ask honest questions, pursue real interests, and take intellectual risks. The conditions within the consortium make it possible for teachers and kids in public schools to pose questions that have deep personal meaning, to explore interests, to create, design, and problem solve, and to bring real joy and engagement to learning. For this, and for all the amazing teachers and school leaders that I've worked with who continue to inspire me and so many others, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Classrooms need to be spaces where young people can bring in their own experiences. They can bring in their worries, their concerns, the things that excite them, and find ways to apply it to any discipline they're studying at the time. And really, when you think about educators, that's what we should be doing as well. We should really be thinking about the last 5, 10, 20 years, 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago, and what are we experiencing? What have we experienced? And how can we build bridges of information to our young people so that they can fill in or even walk over those gaps, right? Like, how do we figure out a way to really make classroom more of a lived experience, but more so give them things that they can use and apply to their day-to-day. So thank you again for that, Danielle. That was one of my many takeaways from what you just shared. So I'm actually going to toss it in a different direction. This direction is upstairs because the next person that's going to speak is actually my fellow building mate in the Julia Richmond Education Complex. I'm going to throw it over to Sharon Morris, who teaches English at Vanguard High School, right upstairs in our building. So, Sharon, are you ready? Looks like you're ready. Bye.
Thank you, Anson. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Morris. I'm an ELA teacher and career readiness coordinator at Vanguard High School. I've been a public school educator for 20 years, 15 of those in the consortium. But the young person I was in high school matches the profile of so many of our students. Although my family placed serious value on education, I entered high school not particularly interested in academics further than what I needed to get out of trouble with my grandmother. And if anyone here was raised by their grandmother, you know exactly how important that is. I had an IEP, an ADHD diagnosis, and I was more interested in securing my social status than getting on honor roll. This perspective did change, but unfortunately, it was because of personal circumstances that required me to use college as a pathway to leave home, not because I was inspired by the curriculum at my high school. Many of my classes use rote memorization, copying down notes, and testing without space for debate or critical thinking. With the exception of my senior English and government teachers, none of my teachers seemed invested in instructing me on how to write well, read academically rigorous texts, and formulate my own opinion through academic discussion. I walked into NYU without the skills I needed, not because of my IEP status or my ADHD diagnosis, but because of the kind of education I had access to. I soon realized that my peers who graduated from suburban public schools and private schools weren't any more intelligent than me. They had the skills, that I was missing. This knowledge motivated me to become an educator myself. Through my ed policy and sociology studies, I learned that my predicament is all too common among students of color entering college. In college, I also realized that my high school curriculum left out the voices of marginalized communities within this country. I had learned only a surface amount about the displacement of Native Americans, the constant disenfranchisement of Black Americans, and had never heard about the Brussels program during World War II, the Chinese workers who built the Transcontinental Railroad, or Japanese internment camps. Most importantly, the shared histories and struggles against oppression across these groups was never contextualized. I dove into these topics like a match lit on fire throughout undergrad. I went into teaching because I wanted to make sure students who looked like me, came from similar economic backgrounds, who were raised by their grandparents, who grew up in single-family homes or lived in economically depressed areas, also learned about why our country was the way it is and the history of protests that is fought against these oppressive realities. I also wanted to be sure that students who graduated from my class knew how to use academic language to write and discuss their experiences, identify microaggressions and disenfranchisement, and feel empowered in whatever field of study they chose. I first taught in a traditional New York City public school for 5 years, and I came to understand the barriers and limitations of standardized testing that prevented students from being taught the rich histories of all people of color. Fortunately, I met teachers from the consortium and realized that the type of education I had yearned for as a high school student was happening there. Like many of you, I am certain that my teaching career would not have lasted 20 years if I had stayed in a traditional public school, dealing with the hurdles of tests dictating what our curriculum could actually cover. I started at Vanguard High School in 2009, and it is because of the consortium's performance-based assessment model and mission of student-driven curriculum that I've been able to thrive as an educator and expand the opportunities I provide for my students. Today, I continue to teach ethnic studies within Honors ELA, creating relevant and engaging curriculum that my younger self yearned for. For example, I incorporate debates around banned books and whether critical race theory and ethnic studies should be taught in schools in order to support students in developing their argumentative writing and speaking skills. I'm also the career readiness coordinator, through which I've been able to work with staff to provide enrichment experiences such as internships, jobs, and other after-school programs for almost 200 students this year. The consortium is a place where we not only care about the academic education that our students receive, but also the out-of-school experiences that help them grow in their passions. It's a place where learning can be its most diverse, expansive, and meaningful. What I love about the consortium is that students are treated as individuals with specific needs and interests, and we work together to design curriculum and educational spaces that engage students where they are. And this is what every high school student, public high school student, deserves. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks to all of our keynote speakers and to Anson sharing such an important part of your life with us and also being such great examples of the kind of creativity, intensity, and heart of consortium teachers and staff, all of whom we are honoring today. As we continue into our 26 years, consortium and consortium schools are proud to remain places that support teachers' integrity, that honor your professionalism, and that are places where our talents are nurtured. So let's continue the great work that you've described, that all of our faculty share. And next year, we'll conference in person. Thanks, everybody. Bye.